I think we have a busyness culture where we mistake activity, doing a lot, for getting a lot done. When I hear that someone is always busy, always running behind, sometimes I wonder, are they hiding from something? Because it is great camouflage. Our society rewards lots of activity, but the truth is we probably need to be doing fewer things for greater effect, because all the things we're doing right now are just creating side effects: burnout, overwork, overwhelm, anxiety, stress. And so it's a counterculture move. I think we think activity is productivity, and they are the opposite. Acting on our priorities is how you become productive.
Jay, welcome to
Thanks for having
Emotionally
me.
Uncomfortable. I want to dive into the one thing. And I said this before we I did hit record early, but also, before starting this conversation, is the more I get in alignment with my dreams and desires and goals and how I want to feel as a woman, a mother, a wife, all the things, that one thing, it just feels too easy, too simple. And yet, in my experience, it's so emotionally uncomfortable. There's so much fear and resistance around it. And it's the damn thing that creates the most freedom. So I would love to hear from you and your perspective of this and why we resist it so much as humans.
Oh, when we shared the book title, when it was like a year before publication, there were some of the New York booksellers that were just like, what? It's never one thing. Who are you trying to fool? That's ridiculous. So it also is one of the common misconceptions around the idea. Nobody actually gets to just do one thing. Like, we all have different roles. I mean, you just named them, right? My number one role is to be a husband. My second is to be a father. And my kids know this. And we did that very purposefully. We wanted to role model what we hope will be their most important relationship as a service to them. But then I'm also a business owner, right? I am also a brother. I am a son, like all the different roles in our life. So we have all of these places we have to go, but it's one thing at a time, right? It is, what is the one thing that's most important in this season, in this moment? And can I give it disproportionate energy and attention? Because that's actually where extraordinary results come from. So just to make sure people are like not checking out in the first 30 seconds, yeah, you've got a lot of things that we have to do every day in all of those roles. But especially in your professional life, or like we can break it down however you want, for our spouse, for our role as a parent, for our role at work, do we know what our one thing is there that truly opens up most of our success?
What have you noticed? So everyone is addicted to productivity. How is this not about productivity?
I don't think they're addicted to productivity at all.
Okay.
I think they're addicted to activity. So there's a story I read about in the HBR, right? Harvard Business Review. And this guy was working with an immigrant and realized the immigrant thought the word busy meant good. And he's like, why did you think busy meant good? He said, because every time I ask someone how they're doing, they say busy. Wow. And I think we have a busyness culture where we mistake activity, doing a lot, for getting a lot done. Yeah. And honestly, as an executive coach, I know that you do some coaching as well. When I hear that someone is always busy, always running behind, sometimes I wonder, are they hiding from something? Because it is great camouflage. Like, think about that job. Your first time you got a job in a big company, you didn't have enough to do, but you didn't want to look idle. So what did you do? Well, I'm going to get up and I'm going to get some papers and I'm going to walk fast. I'm going to look busy because people reward it. We get rewarded and we like, man, you kick butt, man. You get so much done. Or how do you do it all? We hear these questions. Mm-hmm. So our society rewards lots of activity. But the truth is we probably need to be doing fewer things for greater effect, because all the things we're doing right now are just creating side effects: burnout, overwork, overwhelm, anxiety, stress. And so it's a counterculture move. I think we think activity is productivity, and they are the opposite. Acting on our priorities is how you become productive.
How do you get clear on a priority?
Well, you've read the book. Mm-hmm. We have a handy tool. Like, it's good to ask a big question. So at the heart of our book is the thing called the focusing question. And we just invite people to ask for the area they're thinking about. In my role as a business owner, in my role as a spouse, in my role as a parent, like, you get to pick where you're aiming the tool. You ask the question, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's very specific. So you're starting off with one thing. A lot of people say, what can I do? Oh, what can I do? What can I do for you? When you ask your brain to narrow its focus, it will. Such that by doing it, right, just means that you're looking for something with bigger impact. It's not a one-to-one. You want it to be in the 80-20 rule, right? The Pareto's principle, that thing that makes a lot of things happen. So everything else gets easier and necessary. And so I also put a little emphasis on the word can, not could do, would do, should do, because we should on ourselves way too much. Oh, I should be a better parent. Oh, I should cook more. I should, whatever. What's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier and necessary? Now, when we were writing the book, it took us almost 5 years. I was convinced that people wouldn't know the answer. Now, I'm 12 years into it. I've taught, honestly, if you count the virtual crowds, hundreds of thousands of people. We've reached almost 4 million readers around the world. In my experience, 95% of people, if they ask that question, they actually know the answer, or they're very close to the answer. Most of the time, they've been aware of it and they feel a little guilty for not attending to it.
Okay. So let's say we know.
Yeah.
We're staring at it.
Mm-hmm.
Now taking action towards it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, it's not really a direct question, but maybe more of like a scenario where I know the thing and my brain is pulling out all the stops. Like, I'm actually forgetting the thing. I put it on my calendar. It's a sticky note. It's on, and my brain just decides, bloop, we're just not going to do that. And it's going to go back into default mode.
Okay.
The amount of energy and effort to like change the current, in my experience, I've had to like fight to make the one thing and challenge my brain. Am I going cuckoo, or is there an easier way to solve this problem?
Okay. First off, you're not alone. You're just not alone. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to attempt to diagnose. Like, my first brain went to my experience. 80% or so of the entrepreneurs we serve are diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD.
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of like real issues with like, how do we achieve focus? Mm-hmm. But let's just take that out. We can go down. There's the NCUR method, if you've ever heard of it. Like, how do we make it interesting? How do we make it novel? How do we make it challenging? Like, there's a formula. If you can get 3 of those things, you will engage. So there's a chance that that could be part of it. But I generally start with, did you get it onto your calendar? So I've got the thing. It's something I'm making an appointment with myself to do the work. Mm-hmm. Research suggests that the moment we get the activity on our calendars, we're about 3 times more likely to do it. So we're pretty good. I don't know about you, but my phone vibrates. It doesn't make sounds, but 15 minutes before my next appointment, it kind of says this thing's coming up. So it cues you, all right? It's time to start thinking about moving to your next Zoom meeting or whatever that is.
Yep.
It cues you. And then we still have to take action. And so I find there's different forms of accountability, but I'll give you a couple of hacks. First off, do it earlier in the day. We talk about this in the book. It takes a certain amount of willpower to do anything that's not necessarily comfortable or fun. And unfortunately, this is the uncomfortable podcast, right? Emotionally uncomfortable. Most growth does not happen in our comfort zone. If it were, we'd all be billionaires with 6-pack abs and private jet planes. But it doesn't. It's almost always outside of our comfort zone. So it is something that we resist because it doesn't feel good. We don't look good doing it. All of the things. but we also know what we need to do. So I look up, and earlier in the day, whatever your day is, like if you get up every day at noon, between noon and 3 o'clock in the afternoon is your morning. So it's very relative to when we habitually get up. But those morning hours, we tend to have more ability to kind of force ourselves to do the things we wouldn't ordinarily do. Mm-hmm. So put it on your calendar and do it early. If you listen to podcasts like I do, you hear really famous people. One of the common questions is, tell me about your morning routine. You've probably asked it, right? Mm-hmm. Why is that? Early in the morning, we have a lot more control. Not many people are texting us. I don't know about you, like my wife and I like to watch shows. So whether it was like back in the day, Downton Abbey or Game of Thrones, like after the kids were to bed, we might have time for one 45-minute show before we crash out. Yeah. And we would look forward to it. I'm never tempted to go stream a show at 6 a.m. So there are fewer things calling me. There's fewer people texting and calling me. I just have to set up an environment where I can do a few things. So we have a morning routine. We get up between 5:30 and 6 every single day, unless we're like on vacation or sick. I don't. Some people think when I say every, they think it means absolute, but I'm no robot. I screw up like everybody else. But we typically will get up. I will make coffee for us. We work out with a trainer. Don't do that every day, but we do it 3 to 4 days a week. And then we will read. And sometimes we do the crossword. That's our morning ritual. And like I can count on one hand how many times it gets interrupted on an annual basis. Usually it's one of our dogs fighting with a skunk or something that throws off our morning, or a sickness or something weird. Never work. The second rule is we call it goals before phones. First thing most people do when they wake up in the morning is their phone might be their alarm clock, but they turn off their alarm, and what do you think they do, Heather?
They look at it. They're scrolling.
They're email, social media, God forbid, TikTok, text messages. They go into the world's priorities, not their own. So we've done this challenge with our community a few times. Like, what would your world look like if every day, before you could look at your phone, you had to look at your goals? And what we experienced was when people were reminded of what their priorities were, they were more likely to keep them.
Interesting.
So on my phone, every time I open it up, it's got impact, family, and abundance. I created a screensaver because those are my core values. Mm-hmm. So every time I go to look at my phone, I am confronted with my values, and it doesn't stop me, but it does prevent me from going there too reflexively. But goals before phones. So those would be some hacks. And the last thing I would say is the ultimate hack is accountability. You're a coach. You understand this. So the scenario I offer our listeners, if you had $1,000 to bet on 3 people, who is going to be the fittest in 90 days? Which one do you choose? You got person A. She's like, I downloaded ChatGPT. I gave it all of my medical stuff. It designed a 5-day workout schedule. It is customized to me and my body. I'm going to the gym and I'm going to work out. That's candidate number 1. Candidate number 2, same thing. But you know what she says? She's like, my friend Heather's going to join me and we're going to meet at the gym every day and we're going to work out together. Yep. Okay, candidate 2. Candidate number 3. They say, I too have thought about doing this, but I've hired a trainer and I'm going to meet my trainer at the gym every day and we're going to work out together. So if you had to bet $1,000, which one do you think is going to be fitter after 90 days?
The last one.
Right. Great. So we all know that. Like hiring a coach brings a different kind of accountability. If you had to bet on the second person, who would you bet on?
The second one in the middle. Yeah.
Right. Because when someone trusts us to show up, I often find I'm more likely to show up for someone else than I am for me.
Yeah.
And that's often busy people. The last person they serve is themselves. And the person they let down is their future self. So this is my soapbox. Like you've invited me into it. So I am soapboxing on you. Please, what else do we need to say? What questions do you have?
Well, I'm like, it's so confirming of what I often hear, what I can hear people saying is, I know this, I just can't get out of my own way. Or I'll talk to people and I'm like, you did all the damn things. Like, what happened? And they're like, I let guilt run the show.
Mm.
But before we dive into that, have you heard of those bricks? Have you seen this product?
Yeah, I've got a friend, Catherine Lavery at Best Self. She created her own version called Helm. I keep it on my desk, but I can set it so that if I tap into my phone, it will prevent me. It's kind of like a phone nanny for adults.
So what I did, because I like that there's multiple products and I like the physical product of it. So I have one and I was like, okay, tap my phone at night, go into night mode if I'm going to use it as an alarm clock. Okay, well then I got sneaky and I start tapping it, going to the bathroom or whatever it is so that I can scroll. So I'm like, what else do I need to do to make sure this doesn't happen? So I tap it at night. I have to put the physical product in my car so that I have to walk outside in what is freezing cold right now to untap my phone in the morning. So like, it's all of these things that I have to ask myself of, like, you set yourself up for success, whether it's you have the accountability or you have whatever. And then I ask myself, what else do you need to do? What else do you need to do? How can you refine it? How can you make it better? So I guess this question or this conversation I would love to have is, there's so many like, do this. Yep. Accountability. And then people are like, I have the accountability and I'm still not following through. And they kind of forget about this human component of it. So like the reality of like the journey of keeping the one thing, having the system and structure in place and like not quitting. Just curious your thoughts on this.
Well, one, kudos. Like, I think your original question made me think, like, am I wondering, am I a special case? Like, am I really like that? Yeah. But like, you also are a special case in that you're going to extraordinary lengths to try to achieve what you want to achieve because it's important to you. I don't think everybody would do that. Angela Duckworth is a friend and one of my favorite authors. She wrote a book called Grit. She's now studying, trying to comprehensively find out what every school's phone policy is.
Yeah.
And the big takeaway is the closer the phone is to the student during school hours, the lower the GPA. If it's on their person and out of sight, it's one thing. If it's on their person and in sight, even if they're not touching it, it lowers their growth. So like, we then understand this in context of our kids. But like, the best grades are when they have to lock them in a bag and keep it in their locker. Those kids get better grades than the ones that have them in their back pocket or on their desk. So like, I love that you created, right, like your own version of a Faraday cage to keep you off the phone. So one of the things you do, if you just do fewer things, I mentioned this earlier, we're trying to be good at so many things. If we step back and ask the question, what are my real true priorities? We can usually win at one thing. It's when we try to win at everything that things fall apart. So we're recording this right before the holidays. I don't know when it'll show up. But like, as a coach, I think imagination is one of the most powerful tools we can give. And so my head coach and I were working with a group and we just asked the question, as you go into this holiday season, right, you can substitute, as you go into spring break, as you go into your first semester of college, as you go into whatever, you get to do that time frame based on when you're listening. If you were to go 6 months from now, what is it that you would most want to remember about this season? And it's a trick. We're going into the future to look back. And people are often crystal clear about that.
Yeah.
And it identifies the thing that actually matters. Like last year, my coach asked me that question. My sister has been recovering from cancer. And I was like, I want to create some memories with my sister. She's in a good place now, but I don't want to take it for chance. So of all the things I could have focused on when I went home for Christmas, I knew what my one thing was, and I can win at one thing. And that requires us to make trade-offs, right? So I find that to be a great technique. Identify the thing that matters most, and there's lots of ways to get there, and try to build momentum and win at that thing. Eventually, we can build habits around that, routines and rituals. Like, what's your morning routine? That's a sequence of things that we kind of program into our lives that makes it more likely that we do it. A ritual is like, I don't know, I go to sports, the batter stepping out of the box and pulling on his gloves. Like we do things on almost that bring meaning to our work. And then habits are those things that we just do so many times in a row that it becomes automatic. And that's a big part of like, how do I keep doing it? Most people we look up to have about 4 or 5 habits that drive everything in their life. And it doesn't take that long to build 4 or 5 habits, 1, 2 years, depending on what they need to do. And then you just ride those habits for a long time. I just think most people want to be great at too many things, and they give themselves no grace for the season they're in. If you've got 2 kids, we had kids 16 months apart. We had no family in town. 2 entrepreneurs, 2 kids, no family in town. Like we got no sleep, we had no rest, we had no personal life. And man, we screwed up a lot of things, but we got a handful of things right. And we just have to give yourself grace in these seasons because you know what? Maybe you're not. I mean, I'm channeling my wife's experience. She's beating herself up because all of the other homeschool moms, right, homeroom moms are like doing cupcakes that are super elaborate.
Yeah.
But like she's running a business and raising 2 kids with another entrepreneur. I was like, go to HEB, that's our grocery store, and buy some. And don't feel guilty. Like you're not going to win that contest, but that's not the contest you want to win anyway. Who cares about those people? You don't need to impress them. Your kids won't remember what cupcakes you brought. They'll remember that you were there.
You said something about, the winning habits. And I was having a conversation with my husband actually this morning about food and eating the same breakfast over and over and over again. And he's been on a food journey this year. And I can see how it's just become his identity. And, we're headed into, like you mentioned, the holidays. And I was like, do you have any stress about this? And he's like, absolutely not. He's like, the repetition of this is so, I have no feelings around going to a meal and being like, I'm going to eat this, this, this. He's like, it's this, I've bought back so much mental energy. Like you alluded to it, but the whole identity piece, right? People step into a journey and go, okay, I'm going to try this thing. It's going to get really uncomfortable. I'm going to rinse and repeat. I'm going to and then I expect I'm going to put a timer on it. Like he said, 1 to 2 years. And then boom, all of a sudden magic is going to unfold. Is this how easy it is? Or do we just like wake up one day, look around and go, wow, shit has actually changed. Like what is the journey on the other side of being so strategically focused and intentional about keeping the one thing, and rinsing and repeating?
God, there's so much to unpack there. Like I immediately want to know what your husband's diet is, but I won't go there. I'll talk about the journey. So
I'm like, I wouldn't even know what that is, but that's a conversation. Yeah.
You've got your kids and they're growing up around you. And how we say they're this many days old and they're this many weeks old and they're this many months old. And I was so confused, right? Because like I didn't pay much attention until I became a dad. And I'm like, why do we say, 18 months instead of a year and a half? And finally, it kind of dawned on me because there's a meaningful difference between a 16-month-old and an 18-month-old, right? We do measure progress that way. But as our kids grow up, except for those very early periods, we're not noticing the little changes because we're along for the ride. Now, compare that to when you see your nephew at Thanksgiving and maybe Easter or summer, like the 4th of July, and you're like, God, you've grown, right? So I think a lot of it is because we're in the process, we don't recognize our own growth. And I mean, there's that great book by Dr. Ben Hardy, The Gap and the Gain. Most high achievers are almost always looking at how short they are of the mark, not how far they've come. Like that is natural for us to focus on the gap between where we want to be, often perfection for a lot of us. We're comparing ourselves to something that's almost ideal versus how far we've grown. And the other truth in life is almost everybody will overestimate how much they can grow in 1 year. And at the same time, they will underestimate how much they can grow in 5. And I'm old enough to think that 5 years is not a long time. You can build a spectacular business in 5 years. You can write the great American novel in 5 years. You might be able to do that in 12 months. It's just not likely. So I usually just encourage people, they have to trust the process. So, but once someone's experienced it in one area of their life, I often see them go all in. Okay, I get it now. I don't have to do everything. I just have to make peace with some of the boredom of success, and that I will have to show up and do things that I know I need to do, even when they've ceased to be exciting. And the people who become extraordinary are the ones that work through that to get to the other side. So I'm going to go a little nerdy. The thing that's extraordinary is that you get through that boredom, but if you're paying attention, you're on this journey of mastery. And now you're starting to see nuances that you were unaware of before. And it gets interesting again. Like, oh, wait, like you've been doing a podcast for a long time. In the beginning, it was like, can I just record a podcast? Mm-hmm. Can I just say their name right? And then you get to this place where there's a routine to it. And then suddenly you're like, I need to experiment with hooks. I need to do more. Like your sophistication catches up with where you are. And there's a whole new world that you see that you didn't see before. So that messy middle is your language. I find that the messy middle shows up every 3 to 4 years if you're growing. You'll get to a new plateau. You'll be like, oh gosh, am I here again? How do I move forward? And then you'll make a leap forward. So I don't know. We got to give ourselves more credit. We got to be a little bit more patient, but it's not like a 10-year journey. So does that help?
And then you're like, damn it, here I am again. And oh joy, this is so fun.
Well, ask yourself this, Heather, 12 years ago, right? You had a big life event. Would the person you were 12 years ago recognize where you are today or
Absolutely
believe that you would be there? No, it's just 12 years. Most of us can answer that question in 5.
Yeah.
We're not giving ourselves credit for all the growth we're having. We're just seeing what hasn't happened yet.
Well, I often think, we're recording this at the end of 2025. I think everyone can identify with what happened 5 years ago in 2020.
Yes, true.
That's like a life marker of like how much has changed in 5 years. And I think from like an identity-based habit, not even being intentional about specific habits per se, but more of like, look how much I've changed and what was the evidence of that? Like, how did I get here? It's because I didn't quit. I didn't give up on a certain bucket of my life.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to the person that is really, I always like play a little devil's advocate, or like the person that's listening that's like, oh, must be nice. But the person that's arguing with to keep their suffering, to keep their contrast, and they're like, to keep their story versus like, why not try? You never know.
I would invite them to ask the question, how is that suffering serving me right now? A lot of times the ways we self-sabotage are often coming from a really protective place, right? There's fear, there's some uncertainty, maybe some people I've seen have worthiness issues. They spent their whole life serving others, so they can never hire someone to serve them in their business. So like, we have to unpack those, but it starts with just being curious. So if this like message is something that you just kind of makes you feel very uncomfortable and you want to reject it, just then ease into it and ask, okay, so what is it that I find so uncomfortable about this, to come back to your podcast, and why do I think that is? And I think sometimes when we're curious, we can find there's a different answer. There's a reframe. And good coaches have always done this for me. And I have tried to do it for my clients. Like, can we just reframe it a little bit? I mean, the beauty is with someone that loves you, they often know the answer before we do. Our coaches are the people we work with closely. You can't read the label from inside the box. So try to step out of yourself a little bit and get perspective. My wife resisted this big time. And she literally is one of those people that says variety is the spice of life. And I just had to tell her, I don't think you have to give up variety, but you have to be willing to deal with a little bit of monotony. And the truth is that tiny dose of monotony, doing that habitual thing that makes everything else happen, will provide more variety than anything you've ever guessed. My monotonous task is I have to write. I love writing, but most days it's a chore. I have all of the writerly neuroses. I'm like, people will hate this. They'll make fun of me. I go through all of the throes of self-doubt every single time. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, written 12 books, and I still am just filled with self-doubt and questioning and all the things. But if I didn't do that, I mean, I can't count all of the opportunities I would have missed out in life. So often the one thing that can be uncomfortable or boring at times, but not always, it will actually bring so many other things to you. It comes with gifts if we can recognize them. But I'm going back to your person. Why? Why is it that I'm resisting? And how does that serve me? Because it almost likely does. And there's something you could do to serve you in that manner to free you up.
Love this. I want to ask you no vulnerable questions, but personal question.
You can fire away. If I just say if I don't know the answer, I'll just say, gosh, that's a great question. I don't know. But I don't usually hold anything back. I find that most people think, oh, you're a successful author. You don't have my problems. But I got all of them.
You're like, I got all of them. I want to know what's giving you life right now. And what I mean by that is I talk a lot about aliveness and energy.
Yeah.
Having the commitment to be on this path of mastery, what gives you life?
I've identified it many years ago, and it continues to be kind of my lead domino. I'm powered by impact. So when I realize that what I do serves someone else, that's my energy. And it doesn't have to be a big audience of people. The note that when I read it, I kept it, that it makes me cry still. It's like, gave a talk and someone was asking me about how do I connect with my kids? I'm a working parent, and I shared a technique I was trying at the time. I would park a couple of blocks away from school, because when I'm in the car, I'm focused on traffic and you're trying to drive slow in the school zone. I would just park away and we would walk and hold hands. And I found that the kids were more likely to actually talk to me about their day in that little tiny period, certainly more than they were when they were having breakfast.
Yeah.
And absolutely more than we got to the dinner table when I got home from work. How was your day? How was your day? He wrote me a note and he just said, I've started walking my daughter to school and it's made all the difference. And that just fills me up to this day. That was 10 years ago. So it can be big, it can be small, but we teach people, do you know what your core values are? Because a lot of times when you're living them, you're living in a space that's generating energy, even when it's really hard. And the fastest path to burnout, and I know this is Dr. Robin Henley Defoe, she came on our podcast. She's like, that's one of the surprising ways we get to burn out fastest, is living outside of our values. So I think that's where I go with that answer. Mm-hmm. Impact for me is number one.
I remember having to, what I say to people is and even in general, whether it was fear pushing me, what I don't want, or running towards what I do want, I'm I didn't have the privilege to not feel alive. I had to figure it out to literally support my body in this journey with no guarantees of tomorrow. I was very, very aware of that. And that was one moment. I always say cancer was a permission slip, but when I was 19, I became a mother. And I remember looking at my son for the first time thinking, I don't want to become a statistic. And so I swung so far as an overachiever. And I internally was saying to myself, not this, not this. And I looked up and I was looking at all the women around me. And I was I need to figure out how to be present and feed this ambition, because I knew I wanted to do both. And I couldn't find one woman. I would hear, suck it up, buttercup, this is adulthood. So when I talk about, and also this understanding the duality of children, I believe that my clients' children send them to me because they trigger the crap out of them and gets them to look in the mirror some way. And they force them to do the inner work to feel alive and to be 100% present for them. So when a woman says to me, you changed my life, I start crying because I'm like, I have changed. It's like I became a voice for their child.
Yeah.
And it is mind blowing to me, whoever's listening to this, wherever, how like life just forces you to look in the mirror. And for whatever reason, I'm like, how is it possible that the more you become, that is all the world needs from you. And you don't actually need to scream from the rooftops. Everyone's watching you, and that is enough.
Truth there. Other truth. And I think that your audience in particular, I mean, you hear it more and more, have been taught by our culture to stifle their own voices, that there's something wrong or selfish about self-care. And my friend Chris Tucker is like, self-care is not selfish. It's a strategy. If we want to provide for others, we have to provide for ourselves. And how do we get to the place where we give ourselves permission to be fully ourselves and honestly love ourselves for who we are? And the weird thing is, the more successful someone is, I find the more likely they are to suffer from that imposter syndrome or a worthiness issue. And burnout kind of joins that club of like the curse of the highly driven and successful, right?
Yeah.
Those are all symptoms that show up sometimes on the journey that we have to find our path through. But like if you're inspiring people to live their best selves and their authentic selves, I just feel you may not make the most money as your authentic self. There may be things that you don't get, but I don't know that anybody has ever died with regrets for living authentically.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go there as dark, but that's kind of the ultimate scorecard. You know, are we going to be pleased and saying, I'm glad I did, or are we going to be saying, I wish I had at the end?
Yeah. I love this. What are you working on now? What in your writing? What's coming out? What topic is exciting you?
Well, I'm working with my coach and my publisher on my next solo book. And I've got one, it's kind of around lighthouses, is how, as we solve our problems, we can leave lighthouses to guide others. That's a pretty deeply personal journey. So it kind of scares the crap out of me, which makes me think I shouldn't have any choice but that one because it scares me so bad.
Yeah.
And then one of my standard keynotes that I've been giving and people like is I talk about this busyness trap. And it's the hustle culture, all of those things. I feel like the one thing is a message people need to hear, but they also need to understand that the world is not lined up to kind of lead them down that path. And so how do we escape that busyness trap? So I don't know what the book's going to be, but I've made a commitment to my coach that by the end of January, I will have settled on my outline. I've done this a few times. And then, hopefully by the early fall, I'll have a draft to share with my publisher. And I'm excited about that. I've written one solo book for real estate, which is the first audience I served. And I'm really ready to do some kind of sequel around the one thing. I've got tattoos of dominoes. Like that is my book.
I love that.
I am all in. I'm a lifer and I'd like to continue that journey.
I love it. Do you ever have a moment, I'm just curious, of yourself where you like fall into a pity party or a victim trap of like, oh, why do I need to do this? Why blah, blah, blah?
All the time.
Asking for a friend.
Yes, all the time. Entrepreneurship's hard. Marriage is hard. Parenting's hard. And it requires a kind of level of compromise. You have to kind of get used to small disappointments on the path to success. Yeah. And man, yeah, my favorite time to throw a pity party is when I wake up in the middle of the night. I can just cry myself right back to sleep because my imagination, I can make it 10 times worse than it actually is. And it might be some sort of cathartic thing that I'm doing to get it all out. But yeah, I think we all do it. I try. I'm maybe a control freak. I don't know. Maybe that's the heart of it. I never want to give up my agency. Hmm. And there are times in my life where I felt like I was a victim of circumstances. And those are the worst because the word victim shows up. And that only shows up when it's truly out of your control. So I try to always come back and ask the question, where's my DNA? That's why I'm asking, like, how is this dysfunction serving me? Because I'm looking for my DNA, because the moment I can claim it, I reclaim control. Because if it's my DNA that caused the circumstances, because I chose the wrong partner, because I chose the wrong path, I can always trace it back to my choice, even if it's highly unlikely, right? But I mean, I knew a lady, Mary Tennant, she was a leader here. I swear, if a meteor had hit her in the head, she said she would have immediately said, well, I shouldn't have been standing there. Like it could be completely random. Yeah. But she refused to give up her agency in a situation. So she always looked for where could I have acted differently so I can control my future. So that's where I'll allow the pity party, because I need to feel the emotion and understand, is it fear, anxiety? Is it the good kind of fear or the bad kind of fear? Like, I need to go there, and it's healthy to go there. But I don't want to stay there, and I sure as hell don't want to live there.
You have given me so much today, and because you're here, I want to let you know the impact you've made on my life.
Oh.
So although I was seeking women, right? Your work has just knowing when someone is fighting like hell for a message and a mission, it just does something to your soul. It's like, I'm not alone on this journey. And I just want to say thank you for the work that you do, because sometimes there's books or messages that I keep as Bibles and you go back to again and again. And that's one of them. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. You used my magic word, impact. And I love to impact a fellow traveler. You're changing lives. So if I can impact you, how many more people do I get to impact through the impact I have with you? So thank you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you.